Well, hello, church. We are continuing our powerful series. Today, we're talking about intentional giving, the power to make a difference. And we're going to be looking at 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 6. But this series has been just about moving from a victim to a victor, and how in any situation, God teaches us how we can plug into His power to overcome, to glorify Him, to really see His kingdom come. And so we've been talking about lots of different ways, but what we see today in this story from the Macedonian Christians in 2 Corinthians is how no matter what your circumstances, no matter how rich, how poor, what you can do, don't do, talents, there is a way in every day, in every situation, to release the power of God and make a difference, and that is through giving. Someone said we make a living by what we earn, but we make a life by what we give. So 2 Corinthians chapter 9, and we'll begin at verse 6. Remember this: whoever sows sparingly will reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each man should give what he has decided in his heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that in all things, in all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. As it is written, He has scattered abroad His gifts to the poor, His righteousness endures forever. Now He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply and increase, everybody can say increase, your store of seed, and will enlarge, can you say enlarge, the harvest of your righteousness. We've been saying that power is often used with the word grace. They're used synonymously. That grace is God's ability in and through us to impact others and make a difference. And so in this passage, Paul is telling these Macedonian Christians, who we know from the chapter before were extremely poor, and yet they decided they wanted to help people who were even poorer, the church in Judea, and they were taking this huge offering that they were sending with Paul. And what Paul tells them is, because you're in this act of giving, God is going to make all grace abound towards you in such a way that you will have all sufficiency in all things to abound to every good work. That's just an incredible verse. But you are literally releasing, he said, the sufficiency of God for your life and for others. The picture that he gives, of course, is a seed. And, in nature, seeds are really powerful. Wind seems powerful, and yet wind comes and goes. But a seed planted grows a tree, can last for generations. But most importantly, a seed is powerful because it multiplies. It doesn't just add, it expands and multiplies. In this particular case, he goes on to say 3 powerful things are going to happen because you give. Number 1, God is going to get glory. He goes ahead and says that in verse 12. He says, because of this seed, there's going to be tons of praise to God. Number 2, people's lives are going to be changed. The Judean Christians are going to eat. But number 3, you're going to change. You're going to be full of grace. You're going to be full of blessing. All the multiplication of giving. You can never overestimate the power of giving. I remember on a mission trip with a friend named Delane, we were at a very poor village. The kids really had nothing. And she hadn't really brought anything. And she wanted to give, but she couldn't think of what to give. But all of a sudden, she just notices a bucket of water and an old rag. And she has this idea, and she says, all right, kids, line up. I'm going to wash your hair. And all these little girls lined up, and she just started washing hair. Well, they were just so thrilled and blessed. Before you know it, the chief of that little village came and asked her to come over and have something to eat. His wife was sick. Delane prayed for his wife. She got healed. And the chief of the village accepted Jesus. All because someone just sowed a little seed of washing hair. Why is giving so powerful? Well, the Bible makes it clear that giving makes room for God. Give, and what? It shall be given to you. Whenever we give, we create a space. Many people say, well, when is God going to bless me so I can give? And God is saying, when are you going to give so I can bless you? I remember my grandfather had emphysema, and my dad asked him once, Papa, is it hard for you to get a breath? He said, no, son, it's not hard for me to get a breath. He says, it's hard for me to get out the air in my lungs. He says, if I ever give out, getting in is automatic. And the Bible says that the same way, that the moment we give, we turn a faucet on. It's called the law of self-administered return. We turn the faucet, the dimension of God's blessing, in exactly the equivalent. See, none of us like to admit that we are the managers of our own joy. We want to think our circumstances. No, we choose the depth, the width, the length by how we worship. We say, well, we're not responsible for our healing. Yes, we are. When we forgive, we are healed of the hurt. When we hold on to the hurt, we are destroyed by the hurt. But there's always a giving that comes that makes room for God to move and bless. That's why even in Malachi 3:9 that we often talk about the tithing, but he says, will you rob God? And you say, who's robbing God? He says, well, really, he says, you are robbing yourself, because when you keep the tithe, you're closing the windows of heaven. You see, God's going to get everything back anyhow. The question is, how much of what he has can he give to you? And he says, when you tithe, you literally create a space. In another place in Haggai 2:19, he says, is the seed still in the barn? I always love that phrase, because they were saying, we don't have enough grain in the field. And God's saying the problem isn't in the grain in the field. The problem's in the fact that the seed is still in the barn. Can I ask you something? Is the seed in your barn, or have you planted it? Is your praise still inside of you, or is it being sown in worship? That determines the blessing of God that will come to your life. It's powerful because any situation you're in, you can choose to give, no matter how poor you are. One of the young children, or probably he's 11, a little guy named Joaquin in our church, he blesses 3 times he's come and given me a card. He may not think he had a lot to give, but he wrote Pastor a card, and I'm telling you, it made my day every time. You see, no matter where you are, you could always give. And immediately that changes the difference that your life makes. You can turn your liability into an asset by giving. You remember Nick Vujicic, and he has no arms and legs. And yet he prayed, God, heal me. And God didn't heal him. And all of a sudden he said, well, if I can't receive a miracle, I'll become a miracle. And he travels around and he encourages people with disabilities. He turned his suffering into comfort, just like you can do with the hard things you've been through your life. And the moment you do that, what you might think is the most painful part of your life makes a difference for someone else through your life. One of the biggest things is when we give, the power of an abundance mindset starts to come through us. There's 2 kinds of people in the world. Those with a poverty mindset, they never have enough. Those with an abundance mindset that have this idea, God is always enough. They anticipate blessings. They don't live in fear. They're excited. They just know God is going to come through. Why? Because they have given, and they know they've sown, and they know what happens when you give. I've often told people about our church here, and we started the church with about 60 people, and within a little less than a year, I had grown that church from 60 down to 3 people. And people said, well, were you tempted to quit and give up? I said, honestly, I wasn't. I absolutely knew this church would succeed. So I said, well, how do you know that? I said, well, because for years and years, I've given, and I know that God is going to bless me. I can't quit. Well, once you begin to be a giver, you just know that good things are going to happen. And so you don't become discouraged. You become a blesser, and you continually expect more and more good things to come out of your life. So how do you release the power of giving? And I would just encourage you, number one, to make a deliberate choice to move from a consumer mindset to a serving mindset. Mark 10, in one translation, Jesus got his disciples. He said, the powerful people sit at big tables and they have all people serving them. But he says, I want to ask you a question. Would you rather be the one who eats the dinner or serves the dinner? And he says, I want you to know what I'm like. I'm the one who looks at life and says, how can I serve the dinner? Versus who can serve me dinner? Now that little difference makes you a difference maker. If you walk into any situation and you ask the question, who can I serve? Instead of how can I be served? Suddenly the power of a difference maker is released in your life. Immediately you go from someone who maybe just is successful to someone who's having significance in their life. Just because you turn your mentality around from being a consumer. I had a picture of this that I thought was kind of humorous. I was trying to take a picture on my smartphone of my grandkids, and I'm not very good at this smartphone because I'm not that smart at these things. And I pull up that little smartphone, I start taking pictures of it, and what I don't notice is that it's on a selfie mode. And so after it's all done, I look at the pictures and I got 5 pictures of my nostrils, or something like that. And I thought, a lot of people go around and everything they do in life is a selfie. Everything they look at in life is filtered through, the radio station WIIFM, What's in It for Me. And because of that, their life is small and narrow. If you just change that little button and you make it all about others, suddenly you don't become a reservoir, you become a river. You remember the whole thing of the Dead Sea and the Jordan River. Suddenly life is flowing and things are changing. Continually recognize when that spirit of poverty is trying to get to you. I know it tries to get to me. Just recently, I had made a commitment that I'm just always going to give. And someone at some store in the airport was asking me, do you want to help the veterans with phone calls, or rather soldiers to be able to make a phone call? And I said, well, sure. And all of a sudden I said, well, it's $15. And all of a sudden I said, whoa, $15. And afterwards I just realized, why was I afraid to give $15? Because I was expecting it all. That was a spirit of poverty. Rather than say, God can easily provide $15, Cultivate gratitude. The biggest thing about people who give is they don't give because of what people deserve. They give because of what Jesus has given to them. If you want to become a generous person, dwell every day on what Jesus has given you. And dwell on what people have given you too. That'll help you too. But just become generous in your spirit. And finally, be proactive. There's 2 kinds of people: those who wait to give and those who look to give. Those who have what I call a reaping mindset, and those who have a sower's mindset. Those who walk through life thinking, well, what am I going to get here? What do I need here? And those who walk through life and they continually are asking, wow, what could I give there? What could I say to that person that might encourage them? What could I do to just lighten that person's load? How could I right now I'm driving in the car, how could I make God smile by just singing him a song? This is an intentional thing. This is why I call it intentional giving. Being a person who says on a daily basis, I'm out to give. I wake up to give. I go to church to give. I've turned the selfie around. I'm focused outward. Someone said there's 3 kinds of givers: those who give what they should, those who give what they could, and those who give what they would. They give by faith. They say, I'm not waiting for anything. I'm just sowing everywhere I go. I'm just sowing. I'm sowing because I am creating power in my life for God's glory and for other people. I close with one of my favorite quotes from John Wesley, who changed the world with this attitude. And he said, "Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, for all the people you can." If you do that, you will live a powerful life. God bless you.